We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Tesam and Beis Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 19b. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that Yanai HaMelech was brought before Shimon ben Shetach and the Bezdin, and Shimon ben Shetach said to Yanai HaMelech, you have to stand up, and Yanai said, I'm only going to stand up if the other judges say I have to stand up as well. And the Gemara now continues, Nifna liyamino, so Shimon ben Shetach, he turned to his right to see that the other judges should say that Yanai HaMelech has to stand up. Kavshu p'neim bekarka, they turned their faces towards the ground, they were afraid to say anything because Yanai was the king. Nifna l'smolu, he turned to his left, v'chavshu p'neim bekarka, and those judges also, they turned their faces towards the ground. Amar lehen Shimon ben Shetach, so Shimon ben Shetach said to them, he said to the judges, Ba'alei machshavas atem, you're people with thoughts, you don't want to actually say what you think. Yavo Baal machshavas, so the Baal machshavas, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he should come, the one who knows people's thoughts should come, v'yifra mikem, and he should punish you for what you're doing. Miyad ba Gavriel v'chavtan bekarka, immediately Gavriel, the angel Gavriel came and he struck them to the ground, v'mesu, and they died. Biosa shah amru, and it was at that time that they said, Melech lo don v'lo donin oso, lo meid v'lo meidin oso. When it comes to a king, he doesn't judge, and he doesn't judge, and others do not judge him, and he doesn't testify, and others do not testify against him. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Lo choletz v'lo choltzin v'chulu, that a king does not participate in chalitza, and the Mishnah goes on to say that Rabbi Yehuda says if he wants to, he is able to participate. And Rashi explains, Chalitza genaihi lo lavul lebezdin. Chalitza, it's a disgrace that a king should come to Bezdin, utehei rokekes lefanav, and she should spit in front of him. V'yibam genaihu lo lakam al shemachav, it's also a disgrace for him to do yibam, because he's taking over the name of his brother. And the Gemara says, Ini, is it really true what Rabbi Yehuda says, that if he wants to do chalitza, he's able to? How can that be? V'amar Rav Ashi, but Rav Ashi says, Afilu l'man damar nasi shemachal al kavodo, kavodo machal. Even according to the one who says that if a nasi forgives his honor is forgiven. A nasi is able to forgive his kavod. Melech shemachal al kavodo ein kavodo machal. But a king, if he forgives his honor, it's not forgiven. He's not able to forgive his kavod. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Som tasim alecha melech, you should surely place a king over yourself. Shetei maso alecha, his fear should be upon you. So he's not able to be mochel, it's covered. How can Rabbi Yehuda say he can do chalitza? And the Gemara says mitzvah shani. The Gemara says when it comes to a mitzvah, that's different. There he is able to be mochel according to Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ve'ein nosin v'chulu, that you can't marry the widow of a king. And then Rabbi Yehuda went on to say in the Mishnah that a king can marry the widow of another king, as we find by David married the widows of Shaul. And the Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Amru lo Rabbi Yehuda, they said back to Rabbi Yehuda, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda, Noshim haruuyos lo mi beis hamelech. It was wives that were fit to him from the house of the king. It doesn't mean that he married the wives of the king, that he married the widows of Shaul. Rather, it means women in the house of Shaul that he married. Umayininu, and who does that refer to? Meirav uMichal, that refers to Meirav and Michal, the daughters of Shaul that David HaMelech married. That's what the Chachamim said back to Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara continues, Shalu Talmidav es Rabbi Yossi, the students asked Rabbi Yossi, Heich nasa David shtei achayos b'chayei, and how is it that David HaMelech married two sisters while they were alive? He can't marry two sisters. Amar Lohen, so he said to them, Michal achar misas Meirav nasa. Michal was actually married after the death of Meirav. That's how it was possible. That was Rabbi Yossi's answer. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha says, Kiddushay tos hayu lo b'Meirav. It was actually a mistaken kiddushin by Meirav. There never was a kiddushin by Meirav, and that's why he was able to marry Michal. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Tano es ishti es Michal asher erasti li b'meya arlos plishtim. He said, give me my wife Michal, that she's betrothed to me with 100 foreskins of the plishtim. And the Gemara says, my Talmud, what does this pasuk have anything to do with the fact that the kiddushin of Meirav was a kiddushay tos? And the Gemara explains what Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha's limud was. Amar Papa says, Michal ishti v'lo Meirav ishti. The pasuk is saying, give me Michal my wife, and Meirav was not my wife. And the Gemara says, my kiddushay tos. Well, what exactly was the mistake in the kiddushin? Because it's written in the pasuk, it says that the person who was going to kill Goliath, so Shaul would make that person very wealthy and give him his daughter. So Azal Katale, so he went ahead, David HaMelech went ahead and he killed Goliath. Amar lo, so he said to him, Milva islach gaboy. He said, the way that you're being Mekadesh my daughter, this is what Shaul said to David HaMelech, is through a loan. I owe you all of this money because you killed Goliath, but you're not able to be Mekadesh with a loan. Mekadesh b'milva eina mekudesh. Somebody who's Mekadesh with a loan, it is not a good kiddushin, and that's what we mean to say that it was a kiddushay tos. So Azal Yoav ala Adriel. So instead, he gave her over. Shaul gave Meirav to Adriel. Dechsiv, as it's written in the pasuk Vayibeis Tesis Meira Bashol David V'Gomer. That's what it says in that pasuk, that she was given to Adriel. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lei, Shaul said to David, I boyis de etein lach Michal, if you want that I should give you Michal, Zil aisi li mea arlos plishtim, come and bring to me 100 foreskins of the plishtim, Azal aisi le, so that's what he did, he brought that to him. Amar Lei, so then he said to him, Milva upruta islach gaboy, he said, well, there's a loan that you have by me, meaning I owe you money, and then also there's this pruta, the mea arlos plishtim that you're giving for the kiddushin, and that's not a good kiddushin either. And the Gemara explains why Shaul thought it was not a good kiddushin. Shaul suffered because Shaul thought milva upruta, that if a person is trying to be mekadesh with a loan, meaning to forgive the loan, but also he has a pruta, daite amilva, he's really thinking about the loan, and therefore that's not a good kiddushin either. David suffered, but David thought milva upruta, that if you're being mekadesh with a loan and a pruta, daite apruta, the person is really thinking about the pruta, and therefore it is a good kiddushin. And the Gemara continues, V'ibay same, if you want, I could say, the kuli alma milvu pruta daite apruta. Everybody agrees that by a loan and a pruta, people are thinking about the pruta. It actually should have been technically a good kiddushin in terms of that. However, Shaul savar lo chazav lo midi. Shaul thought that it's not even a pruta. 100 foreskins of the plishtim is not worth anything. Not even a pruta. It's not a good kiddushin. David savar, and David thought chazav lekalbe v'shunri. It's fit to be food for dogs and cats, and therefore it's worth at least a pruta. And the Gemara continues for Rabbi Yossi. Now, according to Rabbi Yossi, again, above there was a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. Rabbi Yossi said that David HaMelech married Michal after the death of Meirav, and Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha said, actually it was a Kiddushay Tos by Meirav, and Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha learned it from the pasuk of Tano es Ishti es Michal. He understood that to mean Michal Ishti v'lo Meirav Ishti. And so the Gemara now says, Rabbi Yossi, Hai Tano es Ishti es Michal, my Darish Bey. What does Rabbi Yossi do with that pasuk, the pasuk of Tano es Ishti es Michal? And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi l'taim, Rabbi Yossi follows his reasoning, the Tanya, because we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yossi hayadoresh mikros mu'uravin. Rabbi Yossi would darshan mixed up sukkim. Ksib, because it's written in the pasuk, Vayikach HaMelech es shnei b'nei Ritzba b'asaya, asher yolda l'shol es admoni ves Mefiboshes, ves chameshes b'nei Michal, asher yolda la'adriel ha'mechulasi. And so the Gemara says, V'chigla Adriel Nosna, was Michal given over to Adriel, because the pasuk is saying the 5 sons of Michal who were born to Adriel. It sounds like Adriel and Michal were together. Is that really true? V'halo Palti ben Layish Nosna. We find actually that Michal was given over to Palti ben Layish, Tichsiv, as it's written in the pasuk. V'shoal Nosan as Michal Bito Eishes David LePalti ben Layish v'Gomer. It says so in the pasuk. And so therefore, what is the pasuk over here? It seems to be mixing up who Michal was given over to. And so we understand this follows. Elamakish kiddushay Meirav la'adriel lekiddushay Michal lepalti. What the pasuk is saying is that we can compare the kiddushin of Meirav to Adriel to the kiddushin of Michal to Palti. Ma kiddushay Michal lepalti ba'aveira, just like the kiddushin of Michal to Palti was an aveira because she was already married to David HaMelech. Af kiddushay Meirav la'adriel ba'aveira. The same was true of the kiddushin of Meirav to Adriel. That was also ba'aveira because, again, according to Rabbi Yossi, she really was married to David HaMelech. And the Gemara continues with Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha Nami, but Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha also, Haksiv es Chameshas b'nei Michal b'Ashol. What does he do with this pasuk of Chameshas b'nei Michal b'Ashol? And the Gemara says, Amar Lach Rabbi Yoshua. Well, Rabbi Yoshua will say to you, V'chi Michal Yolda, did Michal really give birth to these children? V'halo Meirav Yolda, but Meirav was the one that actually gave birth to these children. And so we understand it to mean as follows: Meirav Yolda, Meirav gave birth to these children. Michal Gidla, but Michal was the one that raised the children. Lafikach Nikru al Shema, and that's why the pasuk is referring to the children as her children. L'lamedcha, to teach you, Shekol HaMegadol Yosem, that anybody who raises an orphan, Besoch Beiso, in his house, all of Hakosov, Kilo Yelado, it's as if he gave birth to him. That's how Rabbi Yoshua understands that pasuk. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots with a Namanik, Chanina, Kora, Yochanan, V'ishto, Elazar, Geula, Ushmuel, B'limude, Simon. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Chanina, Omer Mehachar. Rabbi Chanina says, the idea that if somebody raises an orphan, it's like his child, that's learned from here, from the following pasuk. This is a pasuk in Rus, Vatikrenela, Ashchenos, Shem, Lemor, Yulad, Ben, Lo, Naomi. It says that the neighbors called a name to the child, that a child was born to Naomi. V'chi Naomi Yolda, did Naomi really give birth to the child? V'halo Rus Yolda, it was Rus that gave birth. Ela Rus Yoldu Naomi Gidla, rather Rus gave birth, but Naomi is the one that raised the child. Lafikach Nikra al Shema, therefore it was called by her name. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mehach, Rabbi Yochanan says from the following pasuk, V'ishto haYehudiya yoldo es Yered Avigdor v'Gomer Elu b'nei Bitya basparo asher lokach Mered ze Kalev. The Gemara says, who is this Mered over here? It refers to Kalev. V'lama nikra shemo Mered. Why is he called Mered? Shemarad ba'atzas meraglim, because he rebelled in terms of the advice of the meraglim, in terms of the plan of the spies. And the Gemara now questions this pasuk, V'chi Bitya yolda. This pasuk is talking about Bitya, the daughter of Paro, giving birth to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the context of the pasuk. But did Bitya really give birth to Moshe Rabbeinu? V'alo Yocheved yolda. Of course, it was Yocheved who was the mother who gave birth to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ela Yocheved yoldu Bitya gidla. Rather, it's Yocheved who gave birth, but Bitya is the one that raised Moshe Rabbeinu. Lefikach nikra al shema. Therefore, he is called by her name. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Elazar says from the following pasuk, the pasuk says in Sefer Tehillim, Go'alta b'zroa mecha b'nei Yaakov v'Yosef sela. It says the children of Yaakov and Yosef. V'chi Yosef yolad, but did Yosef give birth to the Shvatim? V'alo Yaakov yolad, it was Yaakov. Ela Yaakov yolad v'Yosef chilkel. Rather, Yaakov did give birth, but it was Yosef who was able to sustain them in Mitzrayim. Lefikach nikru al shemo. That's why they were called by his name. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says that Rabbi Yonasan says, Kol hamelamed ben chaveiro Torah, anyone who teaches the son of his friend Torah, ma'al olav akos of kilo yoladu. The pasuk considers as if he gave birth to him. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, V'ela told us Aaron and Moshe. It says these are the children of Aaron and Moshe. Uchsiv V'ela shemos b'nei Aaron, and then it says these are the names of the children of Aaron. It mentions the children of Aaron, not the children of Moshe. Lomar loch, it's to say to you, Aaron yolad, that Aaron gave birth. It was Aaron's children, who Moshe limed, but Moshe taught them, lefikach nikru al shemo. That's why they are called by his name. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Lachein ko amar Hashem, therefore so says Hashem. This is a pasuk in Yeshayahu, El beis Yaakov asher podu es Avram. It says to the house of Yaakov that Yaakov redeemed Avraham. The Gemara says, V'chihechon matzino b'Yaakov shepadu li Avram. Where do we find that Yaakov redeemed Avram? Amar Rav Yehuda says, Shepadu mitzar gidol banim. It means to say that Yaakov redeemed Avram from having to raise many children. Instead of Avram having to raise the 12 Shvatim, it was Yaakov that did that. That was a redemption, so to speak, of Avram. V'hainu dichsiv, and that's what's written in the pasuk, Lo ato yevosh Yaakov v'gomer. The pasuk means to say, Lo ato yevosh Yaakov me'aviv. Yaakov should not be ashamed from his father. V'lo ato panav yechvaru me'avi aviv. And also his face should not be pale from the father of his father, meaning from Avram, because he redeemed Avram, so to speak. And the Gemara continues, Ksiv Palti Uchsiv Paltiel. With regards to Palti ben Laish, it calls him Palti, but it also calls him Paltiel. What was his real name? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says Palti Shemo. His actual name was Palti. V'lama nikra Shemo Paltiel. Why is he referred to as Paltiel? Shepoltu keil min ha'aver. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved him from the Avera. He made sure not to have relations with Michal because he understood she was really the wife of David HaMelech. Ma'asa, what did he do? No'atz cherev beino leveina. He placed a sword between him and her. Amar, he said, Kol ha'osek b'davar zeh. Anybody who engages in this, yidkar b'cherev zeh, he will be stabbed by this sword. But the Gemara continues, Vaksib, but isn't it written, Vayelech ito isha? It says that her husband went with her. It sounds like he was her husband. The Gemara says, no, Shanasa Lakisha, he was like her husband in terms of his care and his concern for her, but again, he restrained himself. And the Gemara says, Vaksib, but isn't it written, Halachu vacho, that he was crying? What was he crying for? And the Gemara says to that, Al ha-mitzvah da'azal mineh, he was crying about the mitzvah that he no longer had. He was engaged in this mitzvah of restraining himself. Now that he was giving her back, there was no more of this mitzvah. And the Gemara then says, Ad Bachurim. The pasuk says, until Bachurim. What does that mean? Shenasu shneim ke Bachurim. They were like young men, shalotam utambiya, who never had relations, meaning again, he restrained himself from having relations with her. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Tokfo shel Yosef, the strength of Yosef, and Vosnuso shel Boaz was the humility of Boaz. This will be explained. Tokfo shel Boaz, the strength of Boaz, and Vosnuso shel Palti ben Laish, that was the humility of Palti ben Laish. And the Gemara explains, Tokfo shel Yosef and Vasnuso shel Boaz. The strength of Yosef was the humility of Boaz. Tichsiv, that it's written in the pasuk, Vahi b'chatzi alayla v'yecher oish vayilofes, talking about Boaz in the middle of the night. The man trembled, and it says vayilofes. My vayilofes. What does it mean vayilofes? Amar Rav says, Shenasa besaro karashe liftos. What it means is that his flesh flesh was like the head of turnips. And Rashi explains, Tokfo shel Yosef and Vasnuso shel Boaz, the strength of Yosef was the humility of Boaz, meaning, Davar Gadol shel Yosef, that great thing of Yosef, when he stayed away from Potiphar's wife, Kidavar Kal v'Kodan shebe Boaz, that was like the small, light matter with regards to Boaz. Tokef Davar Gadol v'Chomer v'yesh lo shem, Tokef is something that's big and strict, and Anava Davar she'ein lo shem, Anava is something that doesn't have a name, Shadam Osa Lefi Tumo, that a person just does casually. Shenasa Besaro Aver, what it means to say is that his Aver, it became Kirashe Liftos, it was like the head of turnips, Niskasha, meaning his Aver was hardened, V'ava Bichein, and nevertheless, Kavash Yitzro, he was able to overcome his Yetzer Hara, referring again to Boaz. V'ava Bisha Penuya Haisa, now even though he saw her by the bed and she was not married, V'imo Bamita, she was with him in the bed, he restrained himself. Aval Yosef Eishes Ishaisa, now by Yosef, it was a married woman, Ve'ena Imo Bamita, and she wasn't even with him in the bed, and so that's what we mean to say, Boaz was able to accomplish something in terms of restraint that was so much harder than that which Yosef accomplished, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph.